Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay.
I think we have to finish the bit Yosef, no?
Yes. So it says here, trying to find a good place to start.
We were discussing on the area that if it was washed by the wrist or above the wrist or so on, and the water
Yes.
runs down,
Okay,
and it doesn't purify them with the second washing, and so on. No?
so yeah, so we can start over here. So it says the Aruch Katav, right? It says the Aruch, בערך מי שצריך להגביה ידיו, שמא יצאו המים לזרועו. The problem is that maybe the water went out to his wrist, as we said, right? שלא נטל אותו במים שהוא חוץ לפרק. So he didn't wash it with the water that's outside the hand, outside the joint. ויחזרו ויטמאו את הידיים. So that's going to now come back and defile the hands. נראה מדבריו שהטומאה באה למים של הזרוע. So it seems that, according to his explanation, the water, which is above the wrists, beyond the wrists, right? That it becomes impure because of mechamat hazar, because of the forearm. Ve'en kan datam farshim, but he says the commentaries don't agree with this. Kemo shkatabti, like we said. So the Aruch seems to have a different approach a little bit to this. Okay, interesting. So let's go on a little bit. Ve'esh lish'ol datam farshim. So he says there is to ask here, according to the commentaries, שהחששה אינה אלא מפני המים שנטמעו, that the concern is because of the water that became impure biyad on the hand, and then it went outside the hand, and then it's going to come back to the hand, and then it's going to, right, and it's going to now make the hand impure. Lama amru tzarich shiagbiya yadav. So then why did they say that you have to raise your hands to fay more? How about it would have been better? It says it would have been better shiashpil yadav, that he should put his hands down actually. Mitchila, from the beginning ad sof, right? This way, in other words, the water will never go beyond the wrists. When the gravity will keep it on the hands only. Right, exactly what I said, right? So in other words, the question is, if that's really the whole concern, then why don't we just point the hands down, and that would solve the problem. So this rabbi answers the question, right? The Tiretz Rabbeinu Maria Avuhav, Rabbeinu Gadol says Maria Avuhav, that which we said, that the water should not go beyond the joint, and then it's going to come back and defile at the yadayim, the hands. So he said, we're not talking here about the joint of the hand. In other words, the wrist. חיבור היד והזרוע, אבל היא בפרק התחתון, כלומר במקום חיבור האצבעות. So it's really talking about the joint where the fingers join the hand, right? That's as we said, right? There's two different possibilities. ומזה הפרק עד הפרק האחר, so he says from this joint until the other joint, הוא מקום טומאה, it's a place of impurity there. כלומר, ממקום חיבור האצבעות, from place of so meaning to say that from the place where the fingers attach to the hand, the kaf, right, to the makom chibur kaf, and then right all the way to the wrist, the zroa, the forearm, even though that part of the hand doesn't really need to be washed, for mundane, but he says nevertheless, the water that touches there has become impure. If so, it says so therefore, if he would now point his hands downwards, in the time of the washing, so what's going to be is that the water which is on the hand is going to go down to the fingers and defile it. Okay. So he's got a different approach, right? Maria Avuhav. He says, we're talking about not between the hand and the wrist, but we're talking about between the fingers and the hand. So therefore, pointing them down is not going to help you in this scenario. So that's the way I understood his words. He says, so even though his language, right, is not really so clear, so he writes that this answer is only according to the ones who hold that when it comes to mundane, you don't have to wash your hands. Only until, right, it's about only the fingers you need to wash, not the whole hand. But he says, according to the wrist, you have to go all the way to the wrist. So then it's going to be difficult still. But right? So it's definitely needs some examination here. Okay. So again, right, we see that there's several different ways of approaching this issue here. What really happens here? Okay. So let's go on. So he says, so it seems he says that according to my humble opinion, it says that we can say the enachinami, that it's true, sheim ba leashpil yadav, that if he's coming to lower his hands towards the bottom, לצד מטה שפיר דמי, that will be fine. Who says this? בית יוסף. ומה שאמרו צריך שיגביה ידיו למעלה, that which they said, right? You have to lift your hands up above. לאו למימה שאם רצה להשפילם מתחילת הנטילה אינו רשאי. Doesn't mean to tell you that if you wanted to point them down, it wouldn't be fine. It would be fine. אלא היינו לומר, it means to say that שאם בא שלא להשפיל ידיו, if he's coming not to lower his hands, if he's not doing that, צריך שיגביהם למעלה, so then you have to lift them up above. So in other words, you got two options according to this, right? Either you can lift it up or go down. They both work. ולא ישפילם אחר שיגביהם, so don't put them down after you put them up, because that's already going to defeat the purpose. עד שנגביהם, until you dry them, משום דחיישין אנשים מייצאו מים מחוץ לפרק, so then we're concerned. Why? Because we're concerned that maybe the water will go beyond the joint, ויחזרו ויטמאו את הידיים, and that's going to defile the hands. אלא שקשה בעיניי, זה לא איש תמיד שום מפרש. So he says, but it's difficult. Why? Because we don't see any of the commentaries saying this. הפוסק שיכתוב כן וגם לשון צריך שיגביה ידיו, and also he says that language which says you have to lift up your hands, לא משמע הכי, doesn't really imply like that. לכן נראה לי, so it says, therefore it seems to me, he says, דאף אגב כשישפיל ידיו היה גם כן תיקון לעניין זה, that even though when he puts his hands down, you would need this tikkun, כמו בהגבהתם, just like when you lift them up. רצו חכמים לתקן שיגביהם ולא ישפילם. The rabbis prefer that you should put them up and not down. Why? משום אסמכתא דקרא, because that's like the implication of the verse. The veinathlem veinasem, right? It says over there in the pasuk in Yeshayahu that implies that your hands are going up and they're not going down. Okay. כתב האגור, right? It says the Agur בשם רבנו אביגדור, כהן מצאתי נראה לי, right? So this name is Rabbi Avigdor Kohen. מצאתי נראה לי, I found that it says, it seems to me that שאם אדם רוחץ כל ידיו, if a person is washing his hands, all his hands, כשרוצה לאכול, when he wants to eat, אין צריך לזקוף את הידם. He doesn't have to lift up his hand למעלה, above, במים ראשונים, in the first water. In other words, before the meal, עד כאן, until that's the end of it. Okay. נראה שדעתו כדעת הרשב"א. It seems like he holds like the Rashba says, שיכתוב בסמוך, that I'm going to write close by. כתב המורדכי פרק אלו דברים, says המורדכי, בשם התוספתא, שמטביל ידיו אינו צריך להגביהם, וכך כתב סמ"ג. When you dip your hands, as we said, right, you don't have to lift them up, as we said, we already mentioned this. בשם התוספתא, גם כן נראה אותם, לפי שאין שם מים. So it says, it seems to me that the reason is because there's no water, שנטמעו ביד, that became impure in the hand. Mitam zeh, right? נראה לי, because he dipped it into the mikveh. To have the adin lemisha shafach revi'it. Same thing also would apply to somebody who poured revi'it palm echad in one shot, as we said, right to the hand. Al yadav, on his hands. The hivam the en shamayim, since there's no water there, tameim, which is impure, klal at all, kemoshit there, like we're going to explain. Lo chayshinan imeno magbiam. So then we're not concerned if he doesn't lift up his hands. Matati lesamak. I found the Samaki says שכתב ואם נוטל כל יד ויד מרביעית אינו צריך להגביה ידיו. If he washes the whole hand, with the רביעית you don't have to lift them up. עד כאן, we already said that. Okay, ונראה דבנוטל כל יד בפני עצמה, מה יראה? So it seems like it's talking about where he lifts up each hand by itself. משום הכי צריך רביעית. That's why we're required to do רביעית. לכל יד, to each hand. לכל שפך פחות מרביעית בת אחד. Because if you do less than רביעית in one shot, נטמעו המים, the water will become impure. ואם שפך רביעית בבת אחד, but if he poured רביעית in one shot, לא שנה על ידו, אחד, לא שנה על שתי ידיו, whether it was one hand, two hands, לא נטמעו המים, the water didn't not become impure. Okay. he says, however, the data Aruch שפירש שהטעם שצריך שיגביה אדם מפני שמיים יוצאים מטמאים בזרוע, according to the Aruch, he says, that explains that the reason why that we need to lift up the hands is because the water which is coming out, right, becoming impure on the forearm, so then it would be that even if he lifts up his hands, he still would have to, I'm sorry, even if he immerses his hands, he still would have to lift them up. Because we're concerned that maybe the water will go out, right, outside the wrist, outside the joint, and then it's going to come back and defile the hands. Okay. Kataba Agur b'shem Or Zarua, right? Says this rabbi, מים ראשונים צריך שיגביה ידיו למעלה. When it comes to the first water, you got to lift your hands up. אבל אנו שנוטלים 3 פעמים, but it says we that wash 3 times, אין לחוש עד כאן. So it's that we don't need to be careful about that. ואיני רואה טעם זה. So it says I don't really agree with this. Okay, interesting.
I'm sorry, who wrote this? That he doesn't agree with it, with washing the hands 3 times.
Yosef is saying this.
Thank you.
Okay. So what he means to say is that even if you do it 3 times, you still have to lift it up. And now what you said, that to lift up your hands, Rashi explains, Rashi built up. That means the fingers, שיהיו המים משפעים לצד זרועותיו. That means that the water will be descending towards his arm, his forearm, ומשמע דשטעמו מפני שסובר שאינו צריך ליטול לחולין. So it seems like he says, implies that his reason is because he holds you don't have to wash your hands for mundane. Only the fingers you have to wash. Lechaf to the right, the connection of the fingers with the hand. So it says you shouldn't explain that you have to lift up the whole hand. Just the fingers you have to lift up. That's the place where you have to really wash. It needs washing. Okay. Okay. Okay, we still got a ways to go. Let's see. I'm just checking to see how much we got here. The Dashi Arif, he says, you should know that the Rif, heavy, had the until tzarich she'agbiya yadav, that which the person washes his hands, has to lift up his hands. למעלה, כדי שלא יצאו המים מחוץ לפרק, in order that the water should not go out, beyond the joint. וכולי, etc. ובסוף פרק אלו דברים, so it says the end of this פרק, מ"ב עמוד ב', פרשו תלמידי רבנו יונה. The Talmud Rabbeinu explains שיעור הנטילה עד הפרק. They said that you have to wash until, right, the joint, שהוא בין חיבור ליד לזרוע, which is like the wrist, right, over there. כדכתיב לאל, like it says above, ועכשיו בא להשמיענו, now it's coming to teach us, שבשעת הנטילה צריך שיזהר שלא יגביה ידיו. Time of the washing, you have to be careful not to lift up your hands למעלה עד שיגביה, until he dries them. מפני שאם יגביהם יקבלו המים ששופך באחרונה, because if he does lift them up, then the water that he pours last, then what's going to be, the water is going to receive shali adam tuma, the water is going to receive impurity. Mihazaroa, from the wrist, ve'achzeru v'tam'u yadayim, then it's going to come and defile the hands as well. Ve'lo alta lo netila ad kan, and so the washing will not count like that. It will not do its purpose. Ad kan v'yeshli tmua deha behedia katane. So he says there is a wonder, because it says specifically, teaches she'agbia adav, they should lift up his hands. Kadosh shelo yatzu hamayim, that water should not go out. Ve'hiach piresh. So then, how does he explain shelo yagbia adav kadesh shelo yatzu hamayim, that you shouldn't lift up his hands because the water shouldn't go out? In other words, it's just the opposite of what he said before. Umari ibn Chaviv, this rabbi katav al zeh shetalmidei Rabbeinu Yona. He says that the talmidim Rabbeinu Yona הייתה כוונתם רצויה לעשות סייג. So he says they want to make some kind of a fence over here, להמון העם, for the populace, for the public. שיזהרו בנטילת ידיים מתחילת ועד סוף. To be careful when it comes to washing hands from beginning to end, באופן שלא יבואו לטעות מתחילה לנטילה, that they shouldn't come to err from the beginning of the washing, כי הגבהה שציווה הרב לעשות, because the lifting up, right, that the Rav commanded to do, he בסוף הנטילה, at the end of the washing, אחר שהשלים שפיכת המים על ידיו, after he already finished spilling the water, right, pouring the water on his hands. והגבהה שציוו תלמידי רבנו יונה, so he says then lifting up, right, that the disciples of Rabbi Yona commanded, מתחילת הנטילה, that's talking about the beginning of the washing, ועד הניגוב, until the drying. הנה רב דיבר בהווה, so he says, here we see that Rav spoke about the present situation, כי סתם נוטלי ידיים הם שופכים, because people who usually wash their hands, what they do is they pour out מים בשפע, they pour it out abundantly. ומגביהים ידיהם, and then they lift up their hands, באופן שהמים מתפזרים, in a manner that the water, right, dissipates. בכל יד, in the whole hand, תוך הפרק, right, within the joint. חוץ מפרק, and also outside the joint. ועל יסוד זה בא רב החכם הרופא לשבורי לב. So he says, regarding this issue, he says Rav came להעלות רפואה למכה, to bring you healing here to the wound. רצוני שהמים כבר יצאו חוץ בפרק. So what does that mean? That the water already went beyond the joint. הוראה So therefore he commanded, but ציווה שחייב להגביה ידיו, that he's obligated to lift up his hands. מיד בסוף הנטילה, immediately at the end of the washing, עד שינגב, till he dries, כדי שלא יחזרו המים, the water should not return, לתוך הפרק, right, towards the, inside the joint. אשר כבר יצא חוץ לפרק, which already went outside the joint. ובאו אחר כך תלמידי רבינו יונה, and then these rabbis came, תלמידים, ואמרו, הלא דרך רב טוב לרפואת החולי. So isn't it that the way of Rav is good for healing the sick? אולם הדרך הטוב והישר, but it says the good way, the proper way, לראות את בני ישראל, to teach the Jewish people, המון העם, populace, איך לא ישימו בתחילה ובזה מחלה, ובזה לא יצטרכו לרפואת תעלה. In a way that there should be no illness, and they shouldn't need for the healing, right? Yeah, they shouldn't be they shouldn't need the healing. So what does that mean? They should be careful. בתחילת הנטילה, beginning of the washing, שלא יגביהו ידיהם כלל. They shouldn't lift up their hands at all. באופן שלא יצאו טיפי מים מחוץ לפרק, in order that the drops of water should not go beyond the joint. עד שישלים הניגוב, until he finished the drying, כי מי שאינו חולי אינו צריך לרפואה. Because whoever doesn't have illness doesn't need to be healed. וזה הדרך ישכון אור לשמור משמרת בדור האחרונים. So he says in this manner is the proper way to guard, right, in these later generations. המתגלגל ויורד בידיעת שמירת המצוות. The person who ובעבור זה יחשבו רבים כי די להם אם יקיימו וינטלו וינטלם ונשאם רצוני לומר. So he says, because of this, the people will think that it's enough for them to what? שמיד אחר סוף הנטילה יגביהו ידיהם, they should lift up their hands right after the washing, ולא ישיתו אל ליבם, they shouldn't pay attention, כי הם צריכים לעמוד על המשמרתם, they have to keep a watch, keep out watch there. They have to watch out for this. ולהעמיד ידיהם בהגבהה, and to lift up their arms, right, and raising the arms, עד שינגבו, until they dry. ואם לא עשו כן, if they don't do like that, אלא אחר ההגבהה, they only did it after the lifting up the hands, השפילו ידיהם. What they did was after lifting it up, they put it down, the hands, קודם הניגוב, before they dried it, לא עשו ולא כלום, so therefore they didn't really wash their hands properly. שהרי המים שיצאו חוץ לפרק, because the water which goes out of the joint, leaves the joint, יחזרו לתוך הפרק, it's going to come back towards the inside. ויתמאם, it's going to defile them. ובמה יתוקן לחשש הזה? So how can you fix this problem? כשיהיו נזהרים מתחילה נטילה, they should be careful, right, from the beginning of the washing. ועד הניגוב, until the right, the drying, שלא יגביהו ידיהם כלל, they shouldn't raise up their hands at all. וזה מבואר בלשונם שמעו ויחזרו ויטמאו את הידיים, ולא עלתה לו נטילה עד כאן השאר, right? So he says, right, that this is explained in their language. What they say? They said that they're going to come back and defile the hands, and therefore the washing didn't work. ואני שמעתי בלא אבין, so he says, I heard, but he said, I don't understand. איך אפשר להעלות על הדעת דבר הזה? So he says, how can you really entertain this notion? שתלמידי רבינו יונה באו לפרש דברי רב. They're coming to explain the words of Rav, תלמידי רבינו יונה, ואמרו תיקון לדבר הפך מתיקון רב. And they said, right, to do the opposite of what Rab does. And also they wrote that now, the king comes to teach us, the time of the washing, you have to be careful. They shouldn't lift up his hands above. So it's explaining their words. So they're coming to explain the words of Rab. They shouldn't say tikkun Rab. They shouldn't say something which is the opposite of Rab. So he says, therefore it seems that there was a question to Rabbeinu Yona. How can you give this reasoning that he has to right? How did he write this reason that he has to lift up his hands in order that the water should not go beyond the joint? So he says because of that reason it would have been better. As we said, right? They should put the hands down actually, right, downwards. Netilah, beginning of the washing. So because then, right, the water will certainly not go outside the joint. So it's lechaf hayad, right, to the hand. I'm sorry, I skipped something here. That's right. As I understand, according to one who says that washing the hands is only until the end of the fingers, right, until the hand. So that we can say that it means to say like this. So if he wants to lift up his hands, he's permitted. As long as he doesn't put them down afterwards. Because this way the water will not go out of the perek, the joint. So that means to say that the water should not go out, should not return. That that went out of the beyond the joint. And then it's gonna defile the hands. The hashta because once he lifts them up, he doesn't put them down. So he says lifting up means that you lift up your fingers, right? It doesn't mean you have to lift up, like like some kind of a right referee, and like this. That's not what we're talking about. Just the fingers you gotta lift up. Okay. What does that mean? That the water should be going down towards his right forearm, and not on his forearm. Precisely, because the water cannot go that far. Right? Because if so, when he's coming to dry his hands, he's going to dry also all the palm until the place of the connection of the hand. To the wrist, to the forearm. But so then we're not concerned about anything he says. But according to the Rif, he says, you have to wash all the hand until the joint. Right, to the wrist. So then what does it mean when we say that you have to lift up your hands? That means all the hand. Until the wrist. And then right, and when he lifts up his hands, so then the water will be right? Uh, Descending, right? Dragging down. Alazua on the wrist, right? On the forearm. Kushabal and Agev, and when it comes to dry, Hayad, the dry the hand, Eno Yachol Lenagev Azua. He's not allowed to right, dry the forearm. לפי שמכוסה בבגדים, because it's covered with clothing. ואחר כך חוזר ונוסף עליו הידיים. And then he goes back, right, and he reverts to wash the hands again. ומטמא אותן, and he defiles them, ואם כן הווה עליה למימר, if so, you should have said, צריך שישפיל ידיו במים, he has to put your hands down, right, in the water. In the first washing, כשם שאמרו, just like they said, במים אחרונים, regarding the final waters, מים אחרונים, לכך פירש תהה דאמינן שצריך שיגביה ידיו, so therefore he explains, right, that which we said, that he has to lift up his hands, לא הגבהה וגמורה כמינן, we're not talking about really raising your hands, אלא הגבהה קצת, just talking a little bit. הוא בכדי שלא יוכלו המים לצאת מהיד לזרע. So the point is, right, that the water should not be able to go out from the hand to the wrist. The imlo can, because if not so, there is to be concerned, right? Maybe the water will go out, right, outside the perek. The joint. So he says the connection of the hand and the wrist, the forearm, and then he's going to come back and defile the hands. So implies that which it teaches, in order that the water should not go out of the joint, leave the place of the joint. The Rambam, okay, let's see how much we got here. Almost finished. Okay. I guess we can venture to finish this today. Oh, that would be nice. Okay, let's see what we can do. So it says Rambam, even though he holds Shem Tzarich Maim Shnim, that you don't really need the second water, right? The second pouring, only when you truma. We already explained and proved this in chapter 160. כתב פרק ו' בהלכות ברכות. Says in Perek Vav, Rambam, Maim Sharishonim, laws of blessings, that the first water, right, the first pouring, צריך להגביה ידיו. You have to lift up your hands למעלה, above. עד שלא יצאו המים, until חוץ לפרק, until there won't be any water leaving the going beyond the joint. ויחזרו ויטמאו את הידיים. And because that will now, they'll come back and it'll defile the hands. When you read I know Nomar, so it says, it seems like that it means to say, שאם לאכילת חולין רצה לחלק רביעית, if we're talking about eating mundane foods, he wants separate, right? Yeah. At Revi'it Maim, Revi'it of water, Chitzial Maim, half of it Rishonim, half of the first pouring, the Chitzial Maim Rishonim, and then the second for the second pouring, Natal Rishonim Ushnim Chutz Leperek, and then right, he did both of them outside the joint, the pouring, the Chazul Liada Timuha. And then it came back on the hand, right? They defiled this water. Yeah, we're talking about the hand. So Rashba Katav b'tshuva says the Rashba Shehu lo Katav. They didn't write b'shar kedusha in the this place the shar kedusha shen notel yad tzarich sheyagbiya yadav. The person who washes his hands has to lift up his hands. Mipnei shehu pesak delechulin because he paskins that for mundane foods ad pek alyon shehu sof kaf mechubar lezerua. It's going to be until the pek the upper joint, shehu sof kaf mechubar lezerua, which is the wrists. V'chol shenotel ad sham v'chozer noten shanim, and whoever washes until there and then he washes it again, right, pours it again, ad oto perek until that joint. Atzmo lama nechush sharei. So then why should we be concerned? Sharei b'makom shenatan rishonim, because it says in the place where they wherever you put the first time the water, do also the second time. Min haperek. So it says if it's coming out above the joint, hahu al kaneh azarua. Hahu al kaneh azarua, which is on the right wrist. En lachush shotam en lahem ma'ishum. We're not concerned that they don't have any tuma, any impurity. Shelo gazru ela al hayadayim, because they only decreed on the hands. Vehi the per kama de sota. So he says that issue with the first perk of sota, b'shelo natal al ela ad pitzul al tzbaot. We're talking about that he only put the water. He only put the water where the fingers separate. Therefore, you have to lift it up. Because maybe the first pouring went outside of the joint. And even though he put the second water ad apitzul until the until the end of the fingers, yachzeru otam rishonim. So then the first water is going to come back, shiatzu chutz, which went outside the pek outside the joint. Veitam u'atayadayim, they're going to defile the hands. Veim tomar, if you're going to tell me im ken nilmad misham she'en tzarich litol ad sof hakav. So it says then we should learn from there. You don't have to wash until the end of the wrist. Be'akshe lama pasakti. So this will be difficult according to what I ruled. Ani lohi the sota deravhi. So he says because that story from Sota is Rav's lesson, Rav's account. The Rav the Kula and Rav is going lenient. Kedita pek kula basar, like it says in this pek kufa v'mudbet, which is in Chulin. Amar Rav ad kan lechulin. Rav says, right, that's only for Chulin. Ad kan lechulin. So it seems from his words, it says that Shehu mefaresh, that he's explaining shachashasha shel Rav, the concern of Rav, ena ela sheitamu amayim, only that because the water will become impure. Bechafayad in the hand, ve'achzeru letzbaot, and it's going to come back to the fingers. Shehu makom netila, which is the place where you wash. Kudat bala aruch, so he says according to the Aruch, shehu sover shechashashat Rav Acha, that he holds that the concern of Rav Acha I'm sorry. The concern of Rav is only that they should be defiled. The water will define with their touch to a place where it's not really part of the hand. We're going washing the sober or the Rashba, and the Rashba holds furthermore that until the arm, there is to say there is to say that the water because of the touching sham with the touching there. But it says when it comes to from the wrists or mala and above, not so. So he says the reason is because this impurity is only by the hands. Levad, only mishum the askanioten, because the hands tend to grope around. Vad perek hazrua, so it says until the end of the joint of the wrist. Ikahai chashasha, that we have this concern. Aval lo misham umala, but not beyond that. Ename mishum de ad perek hazrua, says alternatively, I can tell you that because that until the joint of the forearm. Ikra yad, that's called the arm. Le'yan kiddush, when it comes to kiddush, yadayim raglayim, regarding washing, the temple for the priests. Okay. Okay, one more little piece here. The Mordechai perek elu dvarim says Mordechai, v'katvu ken lefi shehem sovrim. They wrote like this. I skipped something, I think. Yeah, this one. Okay, so it says. King Katuat Tosod. That says in Tosod Verosh, and also the Rosh Perek Kol Yabasar, all there in this Perek. The King Katuat Smag also Samag Ve'Mordechi Ve'Truma. I'm sorry. Ve'Mordechi. All these rabbis wrote the same thing. Perek Elu Dvarim. The Katu Ken Lefi Shein Sovrin. They wrote this because they hold the Maim Shanim the Tanan Masechet Yadayim. Regarding the second water, which we are used to. So he says again, we said this already. So then he says, that's what it says in Smag. We said this. In this parak, they wrote this because they hold the Maim Shneim, the Tanan, Masechet Yadayim, the second word that we learned in this Masechet Yadayim. Afilu lechulin nami says even for mundane also. Matnu, they were taught about also the mundane. Katu, so in other words, not like the Rambam who said before, we mentioned that he holds that you don't need for mundane second water, only the first pouring. וכתוב נראה מתוך המשנה, דהיינו, דווקא כשלא שפך רביעית בבת אחת. But as we said, right, that's only if they didn't spill a רביעית in one shot. אבל כששפך רביעית בבת אחת, if he did spill רביעית in one shot, ידיו טהורות, so then you're pure anyway, either way, right? כתבו רבנו בסימן זה, the two wrote this in this chapter. Okay, so we're done with that. So let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch and see what we got there. So, yeah, okay. So it says here like the Shulchan Aruch. Hanotel tzarich le'agbiya yadav. That's what it said, right? When you're washing your hands, you have to lift up your hands. Dehainu rosh etzba'otav, right? But not like, a referee, right? Touchdown, not like that, right? Just like this. Okay. So, dehainu rosh etzba'otav. למעלה, שלא יצאו מים מחוץ לפרק ויחזרו, right? So what's the point, right? What's the reason for that? Because we don't want the water to come back, right, which is beyond the joint, and to defile the hands. So now the question is like this, right? I ask you guys, according to all this that we learned, right? We learned a lot of stuff already. So why is it going to defile the hands when it comes back down from beyond the wrists? What's the reason for that? Anybody is brave enough
to tumah of the body?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The tumah of the body?
Right. So you would think, right, something like that. But the truth is, right, that what we're really saying here is that according to what we said in the Bet Yosef, The problem is that we're afraid, that that water that is beyond the wrist, beyond the joint, was only washed once over there, not twice, because and then if that water was not washed over again the second time, right, that water is going to come back. It's impure, that water. It's going to come back and then
Gotcha.
defile the hands. Right. So this is a problem. That's why we don't want that. Okay, so anyway, it says,
Rabbi, I'm sorry. What if we use Poland Spring?
uh, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because I have to tell you that one
Nobody
of the,
laughed, but
one of
yeah.
the things that I learned from my rabbi,
Yes.
he didn't only teach us halacha, but he taught us also some hygienic things. Right? So one of the things he said was that spring water, right? In other words, the bottled water that you buy, is really not so healthy at all.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that a while back, because it sits and.
Right, exactly. It sits, the bacteria builds up in the bottle.
Yeah,
So, you know, healthy water is moving water.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Water which is like stationary, just sitting there, for like it could be like on the shelf for like a month or two.
Mm,
You never know how long it stays there. So it's pretty nasty. Like so the rabbi said, don't drink that stuff. He told us, drink tap water. It's much healthier. He said,
it's not just the rabbi recommending not to drink bottled water. It's people that
yeah,
are
yeah. He probably he
experts
probably he
in
probably learned
that
it from
field. But
them. That's the whole thing, right?
yeah, but with the
Uh,
bottled water, there's another issue aside from it's just sitting there. It's the
yeah,
plastic also. You know.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay. Well,
plastic.
Yeah.
okay. So you get the point, right? That that's why I drink. I drink tap water, which is filtered. I have a Brita. That's it. That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good
Well,
enough. That's good enough
we
for New
have great
York.
we have great water in New York City. In Long
Exactly. That's the whole
Island,
thing. New York has good water. Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. It's just a few miles away. Their water is undrinkable. You know.
Ah, really? Oh,
Yeah, yeah. In Long
I
Island, the
didn't know
water is
that.
undrinkable. Yeah, yeah. They
Oh
get the
boy.
water from I forget where they don't get it from our reservoir. They get it from
Oh,
somewhere else.
I see. Very interesting. Okay. So anyway, right, that's the story there, whatever. So it's good to note that. I tell you honestly, I just think it's also a waste of money, to buy water. It's just ridiculous. You know, there's better ways to handle that situation. I don't even know why
It
people
became
bother with it.
popularized by fashion. It was
Right. Yeah,
fashionable
it's
to
true.
carry a
Yeah.
little bottle
It's
of
true.
water.
It's like, oh, you buy water in like, the store, like it's like
It's more expensive than gas now.
okay. All right, so there you go, right? That's the story there. So okay, fine, you got that. So anyway, let's go on. So he says, right, that I don't want to keep them here all night. Right, our audience over here discussing bottled water. So anyway, right, he brings the Ramah here that هو الدين مشبلين انتخاب ابتلاء. So Ramah says also, right, what we said already, that the same thing would apply if he would point them downwards, right? That also would do the problem, fix the problem, because this way, the water will never get beyond the wrist, right? So then you won't have any issues. Odd so far, right, until the end. The Shapir Dami, that's also good. To point them down. Okay, well, there you go. רק שיזהר שלא יגביה תחילה ראשי אצבעותיו ואחר כך ישמינם. But he says the worst thing to do is what? To first put it up and then to put it down, right? Then you're really in trouble, right? That's the worst thing to do, because then the water will come back down, and right, defile you. You're gonna get defiled, Right? That's the thing. Okay. So anyway, right? That's like just like I told you. Okay, so then goes on the Shulchan Aruch, והיינו כשאינו נוטל כל היד עד מקום חיבור היד. So that's when does that apply? When he's not washing the whole hand until right the wrist, עם הזרוע, right? אבל אם נוטל עד שם, but if he's watching until there, right? אינו צריך להגביה ידיו, he doesn't have to lift up his hands. And then, right, it says in parentheses, and there are those who argue with that, right? As we saw in the Beit Yosef, there's different opinions about this. So if you're washing until there, you're good. Anyway, also if he spilled on both his hands, right, on Revi'it, right, he spilled the Revi'it in one shot. Since there's no impure water there, so he doesn't have to lift up his hands. Also, he says the one who dips his hands, right, as we say, immerses his hands in mikveh, he doesn't have to lift it up. So you know what we'll do? We'll go over this again, the Shulchan Aruch next time, because we're like I'm running a little bit, right? I'm like, I'm a little bit under pressure here. So next time we'll go over this again. Right, now that we know that spring water is not, right, bottled water is not good for you. At least we know that much.
Yeah, so I just reconfirmed it, guys. We get our delicious, good water in the city from upstate reservoirs.
Right, from upstate, yes.
Area. Yeah, and they get it from the underground in Suffolk County itself. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah. So
some kind of a well there, some kind of a
some kind of a purifier. I don't know what it is.
Aquifer.
Yeah. No, I know because Shalva's family basically has been living on bottled water because their water is undrinkable.
Oh Lord! Oh my God! Yeah, all right, good to know. Okay, so we know.
All right.
Okay, so we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Laila Tov Chazak Baruch. Pray for our valiant soldiers. They're doing an incredible job, Baruch Hashem, cleaning out all the Nazis.
But a lot of people are dying there, Rabbi.
Right, but the main thing is that that's the way war is. There's no sterile war, Dave. People die on both sides, but the point is, we have to clean out the Nazis. All right, see you guys tomorrow, Baruch Hashem. Laila Tov.
Thank you so much.
Rabbi, you there? Rabbi.
Yeah, of course I'm here.
Yeah. I just in case I missed you tomorrow. That fill-in on Sukkot, I always forget every year.
Yeah, so you're not going to put the whole Sukkot, right? From
the whole Sukkot,
starting Thursday, right, and then until next week, until Simchat Torah.
Right. Got it.
God bless. All the best.
God bless. Bye.